Well, go on, everybody. Lennox here from Simple 123 Trader. This is the weekly playbook outlook for Sunday, July 25th to Friday, July 30th. Hope everybody is doing well and are safe. Let's take a look at the futures for the Forex and US stock market, see what's shaping up for the week. Looking at Aussie dollar on the futures first, and you can see from previous analysis that so far we are spot on with the moves. Again, I'm going to go over the fact that there was a head and shoulders pattern which was signaling a break of that pattern to the downside, and that's what's occurring as we speak. And we'd be looking for prices to come down into this level. So onward down for the Aussie dollar, lots of weakness. Any pullbacks to the upside would present opportunities to sell the Aussie dollar. Okay, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin on the weekly, also head and shoulders pattern, and then a big breach of that head and shoulders pattern to the downside, and languishing in this area for quite a while, pushing back to the upside, more of a fake out move, opportunities again to sell into this move to the upside, back down, as this is all shaping up as a selling opportunity for Bitcoin. All right, so it might go a little higher for the week, for this week. We could see price breach this level and go up even a little higher, maybe back up at, close to 45,000 thereabouts. We could see price coming up back up into this area for sure, and but it still be opportunity to sell once that does that. Okay, taking a look at crude oil. Now, crude oil has reached a very strong resistance area and has now taken a little pullback, albeit it's going to be short-lived, and it is short-lived, as you can see. The pullback into another previous resistance, and now it's pushing back to the upside. So is it done at this point? We could see a further drop one more time before we get a push to the upside. So be watchful. Might be a little bit of weakness starting the week off, but this could eventually turn to strength in the longer term. Taking a look at the Canadian dollar on the weekly, it too has been in quite a downward mode, but it's looking now to turn back. We got a nice, you can see a nice pin bar on the weekly there, and trying now to turn around, but more than likely we will get further decline before we get that push back to the upside. Okay, so maybe in the very short term a push to the upside, but eventually coming back before it makes that move. So a little bit of volatility in Canadian dollar for the beginning of this week. Okay, and let's take a look at the US dollar on the weekly. Okay, US dollar reached the previous resistance area after hitting previous support, and is now looking to turn to the downside going into this week. So we had lots of strength into this week and with some news and so forth, but now it's looking like it's shaping up to collapse to the downside here. So we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the week, but I would expect weakness in the US dollar going forward. The euro. So if my analysis of the US dollar is correct, then euro should see a bounce this week. Right now it's looking a little bit on the weak side, of course, quite the drop, but it has come down to a previous support area, and we could see a bounce going into the rest of the week. If the US dollar indeed continues to fall, then that's what would happen with the euro. Take a look at the Swiss franc. Swiss franc, you can see quasi head and shoulders here, and breach of that neckline right in about that area. So we could see further moves to the upside in the short term, but eventually heading back to the downside in the longer term. So going into this week, maybe a little bit of a push to the upside, but that might be short-lived. Okay, it's more of a down move overall, so be watchful on that. The US, or sorry, this is gold. So gold, it's in a battle right now. It's trying very hard to push back to the upside, but is having some problems right now. We're again at a pretty interesting spot, and I would see further declines into this week. Looking at the daily, you can see that it's a pseudo move to the upside, but it looks like we might be exhausted, and we could get a little bit of a move to the upside short term, but further declines in the going into the rest of the week is more likely. Okay, taking a look at the Japanese yen on the weekly, quite the drop on the Japanese yen, right back down to a previous support area, looking to form a move that could take it back up again. But right now in the short term, we're getting moves to the downside. So I would see this continuing to the downside short term, at least. If it breaches this low, then of course all bets are off. We're heading down further, but we could see a push to the upside in the short term as well here. Okay, looking at the New Zealand dollar on the weekly, and it's similar to its cousin there, the Aussie. We've got breach of that neckline, and we're heading to the downside. So I see further declines in Aussie and New Zealand as the US dollar. If the US dollar continues its decline, then this might be interesting, because usually they're going the opposite ways. But right now, we look like further declines is in the cards for New Zealand, Aussie, Euro. Euro is looking to turn, but right now this still looks very weak going forward. Okay, I'll take a look at the Mexican peso, and still trying to battle to get past this very strong resistance area. Right now taking a turn to the downside, and I would see further down with a weak US dollar, further downside up to come for the US Mexican pair, or the Mexican peso futures altogether. This is the British pound on the weekly. Okay, did not form a head and shoulders here, but quite the drop, and now it's trying to push back to the upside. With a weak US dollar, we could see that push to the upside, but again, a little leery because of course the Aussie, New Zealand are both looking rather weak as well. So this could continue weak to the downside. Euro is interesting because it should do the opposite of what the US dollar is for sure. These ones can obviously do something totally different. So perhaps a short-term push to the upside, but more than likely short-lived, and we'll probably see another push to the downside occurring before the week is out. Okay, let's take a look at silver. Okay, silver on the weekly. Okay, silver is been very volatile. Up, you can see up and down, very choppy, and we're on our way down back to a previous level of support on an angle, and looking like it still has a little bit of weakness to go. And I can see that I would maybe it might have a push to the upside in the short term this week, but overall we're heading down one more time. The likely scenario for silver. The US 2000, that's the the Russell 2000, a basket of mid-cap stocks. Right now sitting in a very choppy, very volatile area on the chart. You can see we're inside of a large channel here, and I see further declines. It might not breach this level, but it looks like it totally could, and before we see a turnaround. So that's a little bit of weakness going into this week. We could hit that level and then bounce, but right now in the short term, some weakness. The Dow showing lots of strength from last week's drop. And okay, let me go to the weekly. You can see it's been very strong and still has lots of move to the upside to come. However, like I was calling from last week, that we were reached a peak and we're going to bounce back down first, retrace, and we did, and now we pushed back to the upside. So what I see for this week is a decline back down to this level before we get that continuation. We can get a continuation to the upside, but first there's going to be a decline in the short term in the Dow. The the US 500, S&P 500, similar type of move, very strong move to the upside. But again, also we could see a little move to the upside, but a further decline before we get that continuation. And you can see we're also in a channel going up, and we could come back and touch that channel before we go again. So be watchful of a decline going into this week. US tech very strong, also pushing to that new highs and so forth. However, looking again like we could be exhausting that move and we could be pushing back before we go, and it too is in a channel going to the upside, so we could pull back to the channel line bottom and before we take off to the upside. And I can drop a little lower on this one to show you a little closer what's really going on. You can see we've reached that peak, and if I go to the hourly and take a look at this, you can see right now that yes, we could indeed slide to the upside real quick, but we could be coming back down again. Drawn trend lines, we would get a meeting of this type of movement before we get another push to the upside. Okay, so something like that could play out, and that would hold true for the tech, the US 500, the Dow. The US 2000 is a totally different animal, and looking to retrace all this move that it has done this week back to the downside here before it was going to take off again. All right, so that's a look at what I see setting up for this week. Profitable trading to everyone. Be safe. We're done now. Thank you.